Hello and welcome to our webinar today, Decarbonization with Biomethane and how companies can or cannot use biomethane to reduce Scope 1 emissions. My name is Aljubaya. I'm head of green gas at GO2 Markets and very honored to host today's session and explore the topic together with Giuseppe, Julia and Felix. A very quick round of introduction, please, Giuseppe.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. Hello, everyone. My name is Giuseppe Pecoraro. I'm head of advisory at GO2 Markets, where I support our clients in developing and implementing decarbonization strategies that are aligned with relevant frameworks like the Greenhouse Gas Protocol and the SBTi targets and initiative. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. Looking forward for the conversation.
Hi everyone, I'm Giuseppe Pecoraro, Head of External Affairs at the World Biogas Association. I lead on our stakeholder engagement and advocacy work, and today I'll be talking about the Let Green Gas Count campaign that I've been coordinating together with our partners.
Hello everybody, my name is Felix Keller. I'm working at Evonik. It's Evonik Group in the energy trading team, and I'm in charge of purchasing biomethane certificates.
Thank you, everyone. So on the agenda today is, I go to the next slide. On the agenda today is, so we hear from Giuseppe from the advisory's perspective, the GHG Protocol and the newly released land sector removal standard and how to use biomethane to reduce emissions in Scope 1, a clear pathway. Then from the World Biogas Association, the difficulties the biomethane industry faced since the GHG Protocol withdrawal of a clear guidance in 2020 and what the Let Green Gas Count initiatives aims to do about that or achieved about that. And then from an industrial company's perspective, what is Evonik doing regarding reducing its emissions via biomethane and what could be the way forward for them. Then we will have discussions between us, and then, of course, let enough time for the audience to also ask questions and answer accordingly. So very quickly about GO2 Markets. GO2 Markets exists since 2013, and we combine renewable energy markets expertise together with advisory to help our clients to achieve their sustainability goals. We also newly launched a zero platform, a marketplace for decarbonization from A to Z. We have a dedicated team of around 60 people working in 65 markets globally. We have 10 regional desks and we speak over 20 languages fluently within GO2 Markets. And since we built over the years a big network of renewable energy producers and off-takers, we procured in total 156 terawatt hours of energy attribute certificates, EACs, around 6.3 terawatt hours of biomethane, 33.2 terawatt hours of white certificates, and 23.6 terawatt hours of carbon offset certificates. Our aim for today is that we, of course, hear about the GHG protocol's new standard and what it means for certified biomethane, but we also want to hear how to make credible voluntary Scope 1 claims and what that means for leading companies going forward and what they could do about it. So Giuseppe, I hand over to you to give us more insights in the new standard, please.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. So in this next 10 minutes approximately, what I would like to do essentially is to make the following claim, that certified biomethane, and we will see what certified biomethane means, certified biomethane can be used to reduce Scope 1 emissions under voluntary frameworks like the Greenhouse Gas Protocol and the Science-Based Target Initiative. And this claim rests essentially on two recently published standards, one by the Greenhouse Gas Protocol and one by the SBTi, that we argue open the door to this claim, let's say. And this is an interesting development because, as we all know, up to now, there hasn't been a clear guidance on the topic on the voluntary side by the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, a clear guidance on how companies can use market-based instruments for Scope 1 emissions, right? So we know that in 2022, just to make a little bit of history, 2022, the draft of the land sector removal standard actually stated that market-based instruments could not be used at all to reduce Scope 1 emissions. This triggered some kind of pushback in the industry that led the Greenhouse Gas Protocol in 2023 to actually take a step back and say, we do not provide clear guidance on the matter. Please consult your auditor or follow some regulatory mechanism on the topic on how to use market-based instruments. And this situation changed, we argue, this year in 2026 with the publication of these two new standards, one from the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, one from the SBTi, and we will see why in a moment. And I think it's also important to stress the fact that in 2028, the Greenhouse Gas Protocol is expected to publish a new standard, action and market instrument standards, which will provide further and hopefully definitive guidance on the matter. Now, to dive in a little bit more into the argument we are making, let's take a look at the context of biomethane. So first of all, how biomethane gets to companies, right? So for the most part, companies receive biomethane from a gas grid. And so the same thing that happens with electricity happens also with biogas, meaning the biomethane is mixed with fossil gas. So biogas is mixed with fossil gas. Therefore, physical identity is lost. And this means that companies cannot make a claim that they are using actually biomethane instead of fossil gas without some type of certificate, without some type of market instruments that represent essentially the biomethane. And in fact, this is exactly what is already happening on the mandatory side. For instance, in Europe, in the European Union, in the EU ETS, under the EU ETS mechanism, companies are using certified biomethane to reduce their Scope 1 emissions and therefore their ETS allowances, right? So there is the Renewable Energy Directive, the RED directive, that lists a series of voluntary certification schemes that can certify biomethane in this sense, that are accepted as a certification. And what type of certifications are these? These are mass balance chain of custody certifications that serve the purpose of tracking how a volume with a certain volume with a certain sustainability characteristics is moving along the value chain. In other words, what matters is the precedent is clear. On the mandatory side, biomethane, certified biomethane is already been used to reduce Scope 1 emissions. And if we move on the voluntary side, so what changed in 2026, as I mentioned, is that these two standards were published. So on one hand, we have the Greenhouse Gas Protocol Land Sector Removal Standard that was published in June 2026. And what is relevant is that this standard is explicitly recognizing mass balance chain of custody certifications, as the one we just mentioned, as a valid way of establishing physical traceability. And physical traceability is just a connection between the product the company is using, so the gas they're burning, and a certain product with a certain sustainability characteristics, hence the biomethane injected into the grid. So this is crucial. So physical traceability can be established with these mass balance and chain of custody models according to the Greenhouse Gas Protocol standard. And then on the other hand, you have the SBTi, the new net zero standard of the SBTi published as well last month, essentially, that is saying that market-based instruments with physical traceability, so certified biomethane, enters in this category. Market-based instruments with physical traceability can be reflected in the physical inventory. In other words, can be reflected in the carbon footprint. So they can be used to reduce emissions. So that's to put a little bit all the pieces of this puzzle together. This is a little bit the chain of the arguments that, I mean, we are going to share the presentation so you have it available. But anyways, that's the point. The Greenhouse Gas Protocol is saying that mass balance certification can be used to establish physical traceability. Market-based instruments with physical traceability can be reflected in the physical inventory, so can be used to reduce emissions. What we are going to see in addition is how a specific mass balance chain of custody certification, the ISCC EU, actually meets the requirements of the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, land sector removal standards, to establish physical traceability, and therefore we conclude that ISCC EU certified biomethane can be used to reduce Scope 1 emissions. But before looking at how the certification meets the requirement of the standard, I wanted to spend 1 minute to talk about what certified biomethane works, a little bit what are the dynamics behind this certified biomethane. So to schematize, we can think about 4 steps, right? So step 1, the plant producing biomethane is certified against one of these voluntary schemes like ISCC EU. Then when the volume is injected into the grid, the biomethane is injected into the grid, 2 documents are generated that accompany the biomethane, the volume. One is the guarantees of origin, which confirm that the volume was generated in a certain plant. And the second document is the proof of sustainability that records the carbon intensity of that particular volume of biomethane based on the feedstock used to produce that biomethane. Then the third step is the transferring. When biomethane is purchased and transferred, what happens is that the proof of sustainability and the GOs, these 2 documents, are transferred via a dedicated registry. Essentially, this registry can be NASB or others. In the future, there will be in Europe the unified database that will function as a unified registry. And finally, the cancellation. So when a company wants to make the claim that they are using that particular volume of biomethane, they need to cancel from the registry the POS and the GOs. This is a little bit to give an idea of what we're talking about when we talk about certified biomethane. And to conclude, I just want to go a little bit more into the detail of showing why a particular mass balance chain of custody certification, the ISCC EU, actually meets the requirement of the new Greenhouse Gas Protocol land sector removal standard. And for our purposes, there are 2 types of requirements that are relevant in this context. One is the accounting requirement, and second is the chain of custody requirement. So in terms of carbon accounting requirement, what the standard is saying is that the emissions relative to the combustion of biogenic CO2, meaning biomethane, they can be 0 rated, right? So they can account as 0 if and only if 3 conditions are met, right? So the first condition is that the full life cycle greenhouse gas emissions of all the feedstocks need to be accounted for, and the proof of sustainability provide this information. Second, also the sourcing information is known, country of origin and traceability of feedstock, and also this information is contained in the documentation. And third, the standard is saying that land use and carbon leakage risk is reported, and this condition is addressed by using essentially biomethane that was generated from waste, so for which the feedstock is waste and not crops. That's important. That's the best case, essentially. And finally, regarding the chain of custody requirements of the standards, well, the standards define 4 types of chain of custody models that can establish physical traceability. What is relevant for us is the mass balance type, because that's the one that can be applied to gas. And the standards outline a series of characteristics of requirements, like reconciliation period under 12 months and reconciliation happening within the same region. And the point being that the ISCC EU meets all of these requirements. And I wanted to show you these 2 detailed slides just to give you an idea of how we, let's say, intend to defend our argument with, let's say, an auditor to where we want to make the case of using such instruments for reducing Scope 1 emissions. And yeah, that's it for me. Thank you for your attention. And I leave the word to Giulia or to Lisa.
Thanks, Giuseppe. Yeah, Giulia, if you can continue with your presentation, please.
Yes, of course. Well, thank you, Giuseppe. I'm just going to start by giving you a quick overview of the World Biogas Association that has been leading the La Green Gas Count campaign. Won't take too long, but just to say the WBA is the Global Association for Biogas, Landfill Gas and Anaerobic Digestion sectors. And our mission has been facilitating the adoption of biogas globally. We were funded 10 years ago this autumn in 2016 by associations from the UK, the US, and Italy, and 20 founding companies. And we currently represent more than 100 organizations, including national associations from around the world. We work at the highest level of advocacy, so at the international level, and our engagement focuses on UN agencies such as the UNFCCC, the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, UNIDO, the World Bank. So really ensuring that the sector is represented at the global level and is part of key conversations around the climate and the energy transition, waste management, and so forth. We work also with various other international and intergovernmental organizations, including the IEA, the European Commission, and many others. Next slide. This is just a snapshot of our membership. So our members are those organizations that are involved in the biogas sector and normally have an international footprint. And that's why they have decided to work with the World Biogas Association. Next slide. So on to the topic of today. Giuseppe has already framed perfectly the conversation, so I won't spend too much time here. It's just to remind everyone that the Greenhouse Gas Protocol obviously plays a key role as the leading standard globally for measuring and managing greenhouse gas emissions, and therefore has a really influential role in deciding the strategies that companies will take to decarbonize. We, as Giuseppe mentioned, the biomethane sector had specific guidance before 2020 around how biomethane certificates could be reported within the GHG, but that guidance was removed in 2020. And since then, we lacked any interim guidance. Since February 2023, the role of market-based instruments has been under review within the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. And as Giuseppe mentioned, now we have the Actions and Market Instruments Working Group that is working within the GHG to develop a final standard that will basically shape how market-based instruments can be accounted within the framework. And the deadline is formally set for 2028, although we know that other deadlines have slipped in the past, so we're kind of working very closely with the GHG to avoid any delay on those really quite long timelines. So the sector since 2020 had experienced kind of a high level of uncertainty, given it used to have clear guidance, and that was removed without any interim guidance. Next slide. That is the reason why we have been working with other trade associations in the biogas and biomethane space to really ensure that we engage with the GHG and raise awareness about the impact of the removal of the guidance and the need for clarity from the GHG on how biomethane certificates can be accounted. As Giuseppe mentioned, these are essential for the sector to connect the producers to the consumers. So that uncertainty, as I said, had a really important impact on the sector, and so we have been trying to get that clarity that the sector needs. So in 2025, we officially launched the Let Green Gas Count campaign, which is an industry-led campaign whose key objective is to secure clarity on the use of market instruments for renewable gaseous fuels within the GHG. So we went a step further from not only biomethane, but all renewable gaseous fuels that will have exactly the same needs as biomethane. We launched the campaign with a joint letter in February 2025. This was a global letter that had more than 250 signatories, almost 250 signatories across every continent and from a really wide range of sectors. And it was calling for the acceptance of market-based approaches for renewable gases in Scope 1 inventories and an entry statement. So we knew that there was a long process that was happening within the GHG on market-based approaches, but given the timelines, so we were asking for a clear statement from the GHG that will give reassurance to the sector that at the end of that process, market-based instruments will be accepted within the framework. The second step that we did, next slide, is publishing high-level recommendations that would really form the basis for the quality criteria that the GHG needs to develop for by renewable gaseous fuel certificates. So obviously we know that also the guidance was removed because of potentially some concerns around how the certificates will work and whether there will be the concern around double counting or additionality. So we created those clear quality criteria that would form the basis for the work of the GHG. These are, for instance, unique claims, so really ensuring that there wouldn't be any issue around double counting, the importance around tracking and retirement, production data, so that they will prevent the risk of retroactive or backdated claims, market boundaries, so a clear geographic scope of valid claims have to be defined, the chain of custody model, so explicitly saying what custody model the certificates were following, and a clear verification led by a third party organization. And just to say that most biomethane certificates nowadays follow these criteria. So robust certificates are out there and are used every day, as Giuseppe said, especially in the regulatory market. Next slide. Also, before COP30, so on 5th November 2025, the Let Green Gas Count published another letter, this time really aimed at collecting signatures from C-level executives or corporate consumer organizations. And the names that were included in the signatories are Nestlé, Pernod Ricard, Scania, Volvo Trucks, Tata Steel, Netherlands, Mondelez International, Electrolux Group, and many others. And the real message of the letter was the fact that we can't waste any more time in the race to net zero, and corporate consumers that want to use biomethane needed clarity and a guidance on how to account for those certificates. Next slide. So in terms of what's happening now, where we are at with the review process within the GHG around actions and market instruments working group, the Actions and Market Instruments Working Group, in December, they published a white paper which included a proposal for a multi-statement GHG reporting structure. So this is a real step forward for us, because this new proposal would include different statements. On one side, the physical GHG inventory, on the other side, contractual GHG inventory, GHG impacts of actions, and also non-GHG metrics transition indicators. So these different statements mean that market-based mechanisms would have a clear role to play in the decarbonization of corporates. And I think the main question here is where mass balance biomethane certificates will land. And as Giuseppe rightly said, already the GGP shows that mass balance biomethane can be included in the physical inventory, which is really what we are trying to achieve once the final standard is published. There was a request for information that was published in March and closed in June that received over 500 responses. And obviously the Greengas Count published its own response and encouraged our stakeholders to publish similar responses to their RFI. And now we're expecting a summary of feedback from the GGP in the coming months. The next steps also, we're expecting the draft standard in 2027. Probably late 2027, and a final standard, as I said, is expected in 2028. Next slide. So we also went, again, a step further in terms of the request for information. We submitted a response to the official process, but we also coordinated another joint letter that received more than 90 signatories. And the asks for this letter were really clear priorities from the sector in terms of what the final standard should aim to achieve. So first of all, the first ask is to uphold the recognition of contractual purchases. And
Julia,
yes?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we are running a little bit out of time, if you can.
Yes, I'm basically finished. Apologies for that.
No
Just to say that clarify what chain of custody treatment will be accepted and where. So really mass balance for the physical inventory, book and claim potentially for the contractual one. Also that the quality criteria needs to be achievable rather than restrictive, so that the final standard will be workable and is in line with what is already happening in the regulatory markets. And finally, this impact statement that we will be seeing in the multi-statement reporting should be following and should allow for LCA to be the basis for those impact statements. And finally, to say that we're also working in parallel with the GGP to have the interim guidance because of the long timelines. And so what we are discussing now is that the 2023 update that the GGP did for biomethane certificates that said that there wasn't a guidance at the moment, but the companies had to follow their auditors and consider the rules of target setting programs or regulatory schemes in their jurisdictions. They should This update was really interpreted as a prohibition of the use of biomethane certificates in GHG Greenhouse Gas Protocol, but really they expressly told us that this was an intention of the update. So we want that clarity from the GGP that the real intention was that the corporates can still use the certificates, but they need to follow best practice. And that's everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julia. Very interesting and good to know what the GHG intended also with doing that some years ago. Felix, over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. And basically would like to give you a short introduction of Evonik to better understand what my position, my perspective is coming from, to provide you some examples how biomethane is used at the Evonik Group, and then to look at the challenges which unfortunately still there. To start with the brief, I promise you, brief look at Evonik. Evonik is a chemicals producer. We headquartered in Germany, but we are quite international. For example, if you see, we have 100 production locations or sites all over the world, from California to Japan, and from Finland to South Africa. So why is it important? Because each site is in a different, let's say, national setting, and has different rules, different regulatory prerequisites to apply biogas. So that's a big challenge for an international company. And then also to give you a brief overview about the products, it's a wide range. Yeah, that's the message. It's a wide range. It's for example, it's about coatings, so it's about animal feed additives. It's about pharmaceutical ingredients. So we have a wide range of heterogeneous products and let's say markets. Why is this important? Because it's if you look at it, biomethane, you will find out that each market and each customer may have different preferences regarding the use of renewable energies, and regarding the preference how much they are willing to spend for an emission reduction when they buy their products. Before I go to the let's say barriers and challenges, I would like to also to talk about some examples, some to cheer up the mood a little bit before we head to the problems. And that's on the next slide, which gives you some examples. Evonik basically purchases biomethane certificates since many years, and we also use them in different purposes, but we focus on voluntary usage. So that's our basically main focus. And to just give you an idea what we do with the biomethane, here's two examples. On the left side, it's about a factory in Austria, which is where the gas supply is completely covered with biogas certificates. It's why are we doing this? Because we are producing there an equipment basically which is used to upgrade from raw biogas to biomethane, and therefore the customer group and the market has a high preference, of course, for biogas, and that's for us a good thing to do, and to show that we are not only producing the equipment but also using biogas when producing the equipment. And on the right side, you see basically a photo of some sneaker. So we of course we do not produce a sneaker, but we produce a certain type of plastics, which are then used by these companies produce the shoes, and therefore some of these customers have high sensibility towards lower emissions when we produce these Vestamid eco, it is called. And therefore, we have this, let's say, product type, which is then, the energy which we apply there, the natural gas, is covered by my biomethane certificates. And therefore, it has a lower product carbon footprint. And we also have an auditor which testifies this. So this gives you another example how we apply biomethane. So one thing is, of course, whole complete production sites, which are where the products are targeted to certain markets, but also not the whole production site, but certain products. And both, let's say, markets and customers, of course, have in common that they either have a higher willingness to pay, or basically they ask for these products. When looking at the challenges, I think we at Evonik, we believe in biogas, but there are a lot of obstacles, unfortunately, out there. Yeah, I don't want to go through all the details, but one thing which is of a major concern is the trading environment in the EU. So it's quite complicated if you want to move, for example, guarantees of origin from one country to the other. It depends, of course, on the country, on both countries. Sometimes it's easy, so they are connected to a certain platform, but sometimes it's very challenging. And if you have certain production sites, for example, in Finland or in Spain, and you bought your guarantees of origin in the other countries, so sometimes it's a challenge. And it's also a challenge because we are not an energy trading company. So our main focus is not to move guarantees of origin, but basically to produce certain chemicals. And that's of course maybe easier for some experts. Regarding the SBTi and the greenhouse gas protocol, which was the main focus of Giuseppe and Julia, I think we at Evonik welcome, of course, the Let Green Gas Count campaign deeply, and that's a very positive initiative. And looking at the greenhouse gas protocol and the SBTi, we think we're heading towards the right direction. I think it's a very positive development. It was rather slow, to be honest. We have waited a lot of years for this. And we haven't arrived at the final, let's say, solution. So it's not completely resolved. There's still some uncertainty which takes place. And as a company which also, like Evonik, has committed itself under the SBTi initiative, not only the greenhouse gas protocol is relevant, but also the SBTi initiative. And sometimes they are very close together regarding their standards, but sometimes they deviate. So it's a challenge too. When we're looking at this development, of course, it's a positive impact. And because it's a key issue which curbs the use of biomethane, but of course there are many other issues which also are a problem or a challenge. So I mentioned already the let's say transfer of guarantees of origin, but despite that it's not often, let's say, you can argue if it's a barrier, it's also about money. Yeah, so biomethane is still quite a very flexible solution. Looking at the heat solution, but still it's much more expensive, for example, than renewable electricity. And if somebody has a choice, then it's sometimes not towards biomethane, but towards renewable electricity, as far as it is possible. So basically, it's a bit the elephant in the room when we talk about the rules and barriers. I come to my next and last slide, and basically it's but the continuation of the open issues, which I think are worth considering, in addition to the greenhouse gas protocol and the SBTi. It's about the let's say heterogeneous picture if you look at the regulation framework or regulatory framework. It's not only that it differs inside the country, but it also differs between the countries. So if you, for example, look in a certain country, so we headquartered in Germany, so then we look at Germany, we have, I don't know if somebody is familiar with the famous DENA product matrix. So it shows you all the different compliance, let's say, purposes, and gives you the let's say the required biogas quality specification, and unfortunately they differ. Yeah, so if you look at law A, you will find different, let's say, specifications. If you look at law B, for example, if you're familiar with the Gebäudeenergiegesetz or Wärmeplanungsgesetz or BHG, or let's say the EU emission ETS, emission trading system, all different rules, and which is a lot of trouble, a lot of effort to handle these issues. For example, some laws provide that you have a maximum of maize as a feedstock. I already mentioned compliance usage not only differs between laws, also between countries. So, for example, we have discussed looked at Finland, to use biomethane in Finland, and of course they have different rules there, and it's a lot of effort for an international company. If you talk about certification, you also have to look at other stakeholders. For example, let's say, unfortunately, our experience is that some certification companies are not, at least in the past, were not fully prepared to handle this. So it has improved a lot, but it's also a challenge. That brings me to my conclusion, which is that we believe in biogas. I think it is and will be an important pillar of the green energy transformation. We deeply welcome the campaign, Let Green Gas Count, but please consider that there are also other barriers despite the greenhouse gas protocol and the SBTi standard. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Felix. Thank you all again for your presentations and insights. Very interesting. And yeah, let's talk about the barriers which are there. I mean, the elephants in the room. But first, I would like to bridge the gap or talk about the Let Green Gas Count initiative, and what difference it made for you, Felix, or for Evonik, just as please give us a little bit insights. And then for Julia also, how you saw that with other companies, how successful it was, or what different it makes since it's out there. Felix, maybe first to you.
Yeah, of course. I mean, to be honest, Evonik has not yet signed the initiative, but we are a big company, and it takes sometimes a lot of time to find the right people to convince and to let's say to persuade them to do this, and hopefully we will sign it. We will sign this agreement soon. But it's a little bit something a little bit challenging.
And when you say that you welcome this initiative, you mean like as a sign, as a market sign, then, like?
Yeah, as a let's say movement. Let's say put it this way, like a movement to solve something which needs to be solved. Yeah. Because it's for me it's the greenhouse gas protocol and the SBTi. The current status is not sufficiently clear to provide a strong argument to buy more biomethane.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I come back to that a little bit later. But Julia, maybe you can also tell us a little bit other success, or what was the success of the initiative so far for other companies?
Thank you, Lisa. And yeah, I completely understand your point, Felix, both in terms of, bigger companies find it sometimes harder to sign these kind of campaigns because of the sign-off process that is involved with it. But also that we are not at the end of that journey. In terms of how successful the campaign was, I would like to say a couple of things. First of all, that the campaign was officially launched in 2025, but since 2023, we were actually working on this with the partners of the campaign. So let's say the most visible part of the campaign started in 2025, but we had done a lot of work before that. And that work led to the Annex B, which was the proposed new guidance for biomethane certificates that the Greenhouse Gas Protocol published when they removed the guidance, which was asking for biomethane to be accounted only if it was physical biomethane. That Annex B was removed and didn't become actual guidance because of the work we did behind the scenes. And obviously that would have been a huge impact to the sector, considering that most of biomethane is injected to the grid. So asking for physical biomethane just means you're kind of ignoring most part of the sector. And its potential to decarbonize hard-to-abate industries. The other key point in terms of how successful the campaign was, Felix did mention it took a long time to get where we are now, where we see positive signs from the Greenhouse Gas Protocol and from SBTi. And that is really the biggest success because when we started, we were really banging on doors. Biomethane is quite a niche industry, and the Greenhouse Gas Protocol focuses on all sectors. It gives guidance on all sectors. So we were just such a small part of the puzzle for them that they weren't really paying attention to what we were saying and to the impact that the removal of guidance had. So the campaign really had the effect of making them listen to us. And now we have that open dialogue that led to those positive signs and signals. And of course, the process follows really rigid governance and a rigid process. And it's hard to go to move away from that process, but at least we have now that dialogue in terms of what can be done between now and 2028, so that we don't need to wait for that final standard for corporates to be able to account for biomethane. So hopefully we'll have something much earlier than that will give the reassurance that Felix and other companies are looking for to buy more biomethane.
Thank you very much. Then saying, and what we have so far, and which this newly released standard just in June of this year, Giuseppe, you made a very clear, very clear case for biomethane for Scope 1 reduction under the GHG, and hence also under the SBTi, saying that, or under the condition that auditors approve to this approach. But how can auditors approve to that when auditors can't do any consultancy advisory? And how could companies still go ahead with these news, please.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. And this relates to what Felix was saying, to this challenge that companies have in deciding to invest a lot of resources, maybe in biomethane, without being sure that that solution is accepted. And there is a challenge shared with many companies. A lot of our clients face the same situation, and what we propose to them as a way to face this problem is to try it out, to essentially put the auditor in the position of giving an answer with maybe a purchase of a small volume, to set a precedent for the following years. So that's the strategy we propose, because the auditors clearly cannot provide consultancy. So if you go to the auditor saying, would you accept this, they cannot give an answer. You need to put them in the situation of audit you're doing, right? So yeah, what we would propose is what we suggest is to buy a very small volume and ask the auditors to provide a evaluation. So if they accept or not, in our case, the utilization of certified biomethane for reducing Scope 1 emissions. We think, again, back to my presentation, that the argument is pretty strong. And so we are confident that, especially now, after the publication of these two new standards, there are more elements for auditors to accept this approach. But yeah, at the end of the day, we need to have companies need to have their approval. So that's the start small, set a precedent, and then have a green light for next year. Essentially, that would be the suggestion.
And do you have maybe any example of companies who did that in the past?
Actually, yes. There was a famous known case of an important company, AstraZeneca, which published, I think it was 2024, carbon footprint, and they had this carbon footprint developed according to the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, audited by Bureau Veritas, I think, where Bureau Veritas essentially accepted the utilization of certified biomethane for reducing Scope 1 emissions reduction in this case. So, if you will, there is also already a precedent of a verification body going in that direction.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Yeah, and also, I mean, if I may add to what all three of you said, Felix, the problems, and we see that, and I see that in my position, facing a lot of clients with the different, with the unclarity in regulations, with the uneven, with the registries not being linked regarding GOs, and you have, the UDB supposed to be working already, but it's not, and nobody knows when this is happening. But nevertheless, I mean, it makes also sense what Giuseppe said, and regarding the proposition of trying smaller volumes and then going forward, because it was done and it's also pretty explicit. Nevertheless, of course, like insights into the European trading market, you can get that from not only from us, but from many of companies out there. Then of course the money stays, the cost of biomethane. And I guess this is something which we can only observe and don't have too much influence. But yeah, thank you very much for giving all these insights and also these positive signs. And I think this is what we all agree on. It's positive. There are positive steps and positive signs in the right direction. And let's see how to go forward. And of course, it's also depending completely what market player you are in your position to that. Okay, regarding the time, because it's already nearly 5 to 12, let's look at the questions we have from the audience. Sorry, so from Klaus, POS, proof of sustainability is showing the carbon intensity in gram CO2 megajoule actually. Is this then the value which is used for Scope 1 reduction? So biomethane is not bringing down Scope 1 to 0, but to this value. Is this also applicable to ETS 1 regime? Giuseppe, can you quickly elaborate a little bit on how you calculate or how you translate emission factors from the different schemes?
So with biomethane, the Scope 1 emissions which would be the combustion emissions essentially, would go the CO2 part of those emissions, which is the most relevant one, would go to zero. And what carbon intensity represent is actually life cycle emissions related to that volume of biogas. So that would account for the most part in the scope 3 emissions. That would be accounted as scope 3 emissions for the company. So yeah, the scope 1 emissions would go almost to zero, because you need to take into consideration the emissions of other greenhouse gases, methane, nitrous oxides, but usually they are much smaller part. So the scope 1 emissions would almost go to zero. The carbon and you need to take into account though the life cycle emissions, so the scope 3 emissions related to those feedstocks.
Thank you, Giuseppe. The next question, do the voluntary systems also comply with red cert and better biomass? I can answer this one. Yes, it does. There are several voluntary schemes out there. ISCC EU is the most famous one, red cert, better biomass, NTA, 8080, and several other ones are all recognized. Klaus is asking another question. What does same region mean in regards to using biomethane certificates? I'm not sure. Is that you, Giuseppe?
There is one of the requirements of the standard regarding mass balance chain of custody system, and in our interpretation, the same region would be the European Union gas grid. That is considered by the certification schemes as a unified grid, and so in our interpretation, the European Unified Gas Grid represents a unique sourcing region, and therefore complies with the requirements of the standard.
Thank you very much. And then how linked are the LGGC to SBTi position? Sean is asking that. Julia, could you elaborate?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, that also allows me to say that while my presentation was only focused on the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, we are working on the SBTi as well. And as much, I think the focus on the GHG protocol is really because of the fact that there was a guidance which was removed, but we are very aware that the SBTi plays a key role. And so we have done a lot of engagement with the SBTi. Just that it's a bit less public, because it obviously takes quite a long time to get signatories on board, and that sort of action takes time. But we have actually written to the SBTi, at meeting with the SBTi. People of the coalition also have really good relationship with them as well. So the main thing to be said is that SBTi and the Greenhouse Gas Protocol do also understand that they need to take a parallel and a similar approach to the same question, of course, around biomethane. So I think they're very much in line, and there is an interest from both sides to work together, and us also being in the middle and facilitating that. SBTi has also said, however, that recently actually, that they are looking to create potentially an interim guidance as well on market-based instruments. So that might happen before this final standard from the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. So we'll be looking to engage closely with the SBTi on that, specifically understand the direction of travel on that, and how we can really support the right outcome that would be the outcome that we want to see from the Greenhouse Gas Protocol.
Great. Thank you, Julia. And the last question, are there any scope 3 applications? I guess this is going back to scope 3, to you, Giuseppe, regarding GHG, or in the.
Sorry, but I'm not sure I understand the question, Lisa.
Yeah. I mean, are there any scope 3 applications? If it's unclear, then we can also.
What we discussed.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, yes, naturally, yes, because if you can reduce scope 1 emissions this way, you can also reduce your scope 3 emissions by acting on the scope 1 emissions of your suppliers or of other people in the value chain. So whatever you can do at scope 1 and scope 2 level, naturally it can also be applied to scope 3 emissions. That means a company can, for instance, help procuring certified biomethane within its value chain, and therefore reducing their scope 3 emissions.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you very much. Any final statements, or could you, all say one more time what do you think about the new release, because this was the subject of our webinar, and what you wish for? I mean, I guess it's clear, but nevertheless, Felix, if you can start.
Okay. Yeah, as already said, we are almost there. It's heading towards in the positive direction, and we hopefully see a final, let's say, statement or written document soon. And please don't forget that it's a key challenge, but there are other challenges out there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Julia?
Yeah, just to say, as I said, we are focused on getting something in the interim, but also we are working in the official process to ensure that the final standard will have the clarity and kind of the quality criteria that we would like to see for biomethane certificates. And as Giuseppe said, the new land sector and removals guidance and its acceptance of mass balance principle is a really great step forward for that.
Thanks, Julia. And finally, Giuseppe?
Yeah, I mean, Julia just stole my words I intended to say, so that, I think that the land sector removal standard really shows the direction the Greenhouse Gas Protocol is moving, and which is a positive direction in this sense of accepting mass balance chain of custody as to establish physical traceability. And I also think that what the SBTi did in clearly stating that market-based instruments with physical traceability will be reflected in the physical inventory is also a positive sign, and I think can also function as a, let's say, as a pressure applied to the Greenhouse Gas Protocol in going in the same direction with their future standard in 2028. So a lot of optimism on my side.
Yes, very good. Okay, then time is up. Unfortunately, I have a lot more questions, but next time. Thank you very much for attending or participating in the webinar and giving us your insights, Julia, Felix, and Giuseppe. And thank you for the audience. And yeah, hope it was useful. Wish you a good day and see you. Ciao.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.